Hello, testing one, two, three. It's 11:59 and I'm scheduled to start streaming at noon. Just wanted to see if I could actually go live before the scheduled time, and it looks like I can. But I don't know if it will be recorded before noon. My guess is that it would. Okay, so this time I have already posted the link in the chats and put out my Facebook and X announcements ahead of time, so I don't have to do that during the stream. So it's more streamlined than it used to be. So most of my administrative kinds of things are already completed and I'm ready to go. So I see there's two people watching right now. Probably one is me. Um, so I am ready to engage. Oh, I forgot to turn my video on. Let me do that. Video. Okay. You should be able to see me. And oh, actually, there's a delay. There's like a 20-second delay. So in a few seconds, you should be able to see me. Well, I guess no, you hear my never mind. Okay, I can see myself on YouTube now. So it is ready for a call. If anyone wants to come in, I announced this last night, or I created the YouTube watch page last night, so there was some advance notice. And I'm ready to chat, ready to talk. If anyone wants to come on. So I don't have a prepared monologue, but maybe I can just say a little about what I've been doing lately, which is similar to what I've been announcing in previous streams. I'm still reading about Ukraine and Russia. I read several articles, including the one on Ukraine during the Soviet Union period, so from 1917 to 1991, roughly those dates. Um, and then part of the Zelensky article, I'm up to his presidency. So I learned about his background as an actor. So apparently he was in several movies. Didn't know that. And then today I was reading about Crimea. Um, so Crimea used to be, I guess, part of Russia. And then in 1954, it was transferred from Russia to Ukraine. And then there was another treaty in 1997, which I don't know if it was specific to Crimea, but I think part of the treaty was that there wouldn't be any invasions. There would be respect for borders. Of course, that wasn't respected because in 2014, Russia invaded Crimea. So, so much for that treaty. So that's some of what I've been reading about lately. Actually, I keep a list of all the articles that I read, all the Wikipedia articles, which is mostly what I read. Um, and maybe if I take a look at my list, I'll jog my memory as to um, what I've been reading, and I can remember more things to talk about. So I've just got a Google Doc where I copy part of the link to all of the Wikipedia articles I've read. It's over 100 pages long, so I've read a lot. Um, I used to not keep track, but I guess maybe four, 4 or 5 years ago, I started keeping track of all the articles because it was just sometimes I go back and forth. I'll read an article, then I'll click on a link in that article, which takes me to a different article. Then I start reading the second article, and then a week goes by, and I forget that I originally got to the second article by a link in the first article, and I forgot like how far I got through the first article, and I lose track of exactly what I read. So I couldn't keep it all in my head. So at a certain point, I just had to create a Google Doc and um, type everything down. Okay, so I got that list in front of me now, and I'm looking at the Ukraine section. So most of the history of Ukraine I've been reading about is since the start of well, around 1917. So around the time of the Russian Revolution. And then going forward, there's of course much history prior to that, but I've mostly been interested in um, 20th and 21st century history lately. So I've got up to part of Zelensky's presidency. Um, I think maybe next I want to focus some on the annexation of Crimea. Let me take a look at the chat, see if anything. Don't see any chat yet, but got a few people here, a couple people at least besides me. Feel free to say hello if you like in the chat. It's always interesting to see who's here. I only know the number of participants. It doesn't tell me who's here, but it's always interesting to know who's here. But if you want to be anonymous, that's fine. So I've got a section on Ukraine in my list of Wikipedia articles. I've got a section on Soviet Union, and then I break that down into subsections. Um, there's a subsection on the dissolution of the Soviet Union. So that's going to be around 1991 when it's falling apart. It's it gets pretty confusing, I find, at the beginning of the Soviet Union and at the end, because there's so many different parties, and they have similar names, and they're very long names sometimes. It's tough to keep it all straight. Maybe I can find some examples for you. So there's the Mensheviks, the Bolsheviks, the Narodniks, the social revolutionaries, and then that breaks down. There's the left socialist revolutionaries and the right socialist revolutionaries, the Russian Social Democratic Labor Party, Bolshevik version and Menshevik version. Um, there's just all these little pieces, and it's tough to keep it all straight. And I think like I often read these articles multiple times because just one read, it's there's just too much to take in. I can't absorb it all, at least to the level that I'd like to. So I will often read an article twice. The first just gives me a basic feel for it, and then the second time around, it sinks in a lot better. So that's a lot of what's been on my mind lately, just learning about Ukraine and Russia. I wonder what you all have been doing or thinking about lately. I don't know if this topic has any interest to you, but um, I got some flexibility in terms of what we talk about. I don't have to talk about what I've re been reading necessarily. If there's some other topic you want to talk about, feel free to suggest that. See, a few people have dropped by. Mm. I put out a some shorts, like a short videos. You know how YouTube has there's a special section of YouTube which is devoted to short videos. So I put out a short recently, just yesterday, I think. Was it yesterday or the day before? Announcing that I'm now doing live streams on YouTube. I also I did a short for Instagram and Facebook, which I only have to record once because if I record a video for Instagram, it can automatically be cross-posted on Facebook. So I did a notification there also that I'm live streaming and also on X and TikTok. So maybe that will help spread the word. Subscribers have been going up and down. I was checking my log. I keep track of how many subscribers I have when, and I think about the time I started live streaming, which was I think my first live stream was on March 6th. So just a few weeks ago. And I had around 805 subscribers at that time. And then over the next week or two, it went up to 812 subscribers. And now it's back to 805. So I don't know what's going on. I never know like why people are subscribing or unsubscribing. It would be interesting to know though. But I don't know if like every time I put out a new piece of content, it's well, usually when I put out a new piece of content, there's some kind of movement in terms of subscribers. So I guess every time someone gets notified of something that comes out on my channel, they think of me again or my channel, and they have a fresh opportunity to consider do they want to be subscribed or not. So there's usually some kind of movement, either up or down, in terms of subscribers whenever I put out new content. And since I've been doing the live streams, it's gone both up and down. So it's gone up to 812, went back down to 805. So I don't know if that means anything about the live streams in particular, if people like those or don't like those, or maybe some people like them, some people don't like them, or maybe it has nothing to do with the live streams. Um, so it would be interesting to know what it is that's driving the changes. Sometimes I block people, and that could be driving some of the changes. If I guess if you're if you're subscribed to a channel and then someone blocks you, I think you're still subscribed. I would guess that's the case. I don't think that would remove the subscription. Um, but if someone gets blocked and knows that they got blocked, then they might unsubscribe for that reason. So that could be part of it, but I haven't blocked that many people, so I'm sure part of the reason has to be due to something other than that. All right, so I've been on for about 15 minutes now, and sometimes it takes a while for chat to get going or for someone to call in. Um, it just varies from day to day, and I don't know how it's going to be today, but I usually say at a certain point, if there's not much activity, that I will sign off at a certain point if there is no engagement. So I'll be here at least until 12:30, I'll say, Pacific time. So for another 15 minutes. And if no one engages by that time, either through the chats or by calling in, there's a Zoom link in the chat to call in. So if no one engages by 12:30, then I might just sign off and maybe I'll go back to reading about Ukraine. Um, so I'm here to engage with people. That's the main point. But I'm not going to stick around forever. Um, so hopefully some people will decide to join. Let me pin that link in the chat. Um, just in case, so there's no chance it's going to get lost later on. Okay, it's now pinned at the top of the chat. Okay. All right. So I'll be here till 12:30. I don't know if I'll be talking the whole time. I'm just kind of filling airtime here. Um, but I don't know if I will do that the whole time. Maybe I can read about Ukraine right now while I'm just waiting for people to show up. Maybe that's a better use of time. Not sure. Or I could read aloud to you. I don't know if that's a good idea. I'm just adjusting my windows here so I can see all the things I want to be seeing at once. I like having I like having one place where I can see the chat window, another place where I can see the number of viewers currently watching, and then another window where I can see my Zoom call. Those are the three things I want to always be able to see. So I'm just adjusting my windows so I can always see those things. I also use my phone sometimes, so like not just my laptop. Maybe it's better to use the phone for one of these. Actually, phone has the advantage. It allows me to see both the number of people and the chat window itself. So maybe that's actually better than trying to see it on my laptop. Okay. So when I look down like this, that's because I'm looking at the phone. Um, doesn't mean I'm ignoring the live stream. It's just looking at the live stream in a different place. So it looks like most of the time there's been two or three people so far today. So if YouTube is counting me as one, then that means one or two other people. I've seen it get up to four. But I wonder what keeps you all here. So, or I mean, assuming it's the same people other than me. Um, so I wonder if you're just waiting for someone else to engage, or you're waiting for someone to call in so that you can listen to that, or do you just like hearing me talk randomly like I'm doing right now? Um, I wonder what's motivating your presence. Um, Actually, one thing, if you want to hear more engagement or see more engagement, if that's the reason you're here, one thing you could do is spread the word. You could go on social media and put out a link to this live stream, or you could just let people know individually. Uh, So, in addition to me putting out links like on Facebook or X, you all can do that as well. And that will help bring more people over here. I think that would probably lead to more engaging live streams than just hearing me talking randomly like this. So I'm gonna hit the heart button. I just hit a heart button on the chat. It makes these little heart emoji things float up in the Zoom screen. I wonder if those are recorded and those can be seen later. Let's see what time it's. So I did that at 12:21. I'll do a few more of them. I'm doing a bunch of them. Can you all see that? I wonder if you can see that. And I'm going to check back later if I remember to see if those hearts show up on the recording. Okay. See the viewers drop down to one. I wonder if that's because I was talking directly to you for a little bit there and I scared you away. Even though I don't know who you are, I can't see who anyone is. Um, or maybe you've gone somewhere else to notify people of my stream. Oh, now someone came back. Okay, let me go back to my Wikipedia list. I also don't have an eye on my Zoom screen at the whole time. So if someone jumps onto the Zoom call, I might not see it immediately. I've been checking it every few minutes or so. I guess I have my eye more often on the chat and YouTube. But one thing you can do is if you want to increase the chances that you catch my attention quickly, that you're on Zoom, you can just say in the YouTube chat that you tried to join the Zoom call, and then I'll see that in the YouTube chat, and then I'll go over to Zoom right then and admit you if I'm ready to admit you. Actually, one thing I wanted to test out is the changing the view from gallery to speaker. Actually, the other way. Right now it's set to gallery, but there's only one person, so it's going to look the same as speaker anyways. But if another person shows up, I want to see if I can change between those. Because I tried to change it last time when someone called in and it did not work. Also, I want to test um, how to end a call with someone instead of just having to wait for someone else to end the call. because I didn't see a way to do that last time. All right, 12:24, 6 more minutes till that's I only guaranteed I'm going to be here till 12:30. So you got 6 minutes left if anyone wants to guarantee that I'm going to go longer than 12:30. Because if I get engagement, then I will stick around longer. I have one video, a pre-recorded video, which I plan to publish soon. It's a discussion or a little bit of a debate, maybe kind of both. Um, Maybe I'll publish that sometime in the next few days. And there's also another chat I have in the works scheduled for sometimes next week. Although I'm not sure when that will be published, but um, by Friday of next week, I'm going to be having a new chat. And then maybe probably at some point that will also appear on my channel. And I can think of one other scheduled conversation I'll probably have. Another thing I could do, I could just leave this stream running. I scheduled it for four hours on Zoom. I didn't really intend to be here for 4 hours, but just so I know it's not going to get cut short, I scheduled it for 4 hours on Zoom, um, from 12 to 4 Pacific. And I didn't schedule any time on YouTube. I think YouTube just streams as long as I want it to until I tell it to stop streaming. Um, I don't know if there's a technical limit. I think maybe there used to be one, like 12 hours or something. Maybe there's some kind of limit, but um, I guess one thing I could do, I could just leave the stream running and just not attend to it for a while, and then check back a while later and see if there's anyone else who's shown up, and then I could engage at that point. I don't know if Zoom will cut this off after 4 hours, or if that also requires me to. Um, I don't know if Zoom requires me to manually tell it to stop streaming. Um, that's actually something I'm curious about. So maybe there's no harm in just leaving this running, even if I'm not here for a little while, and just check back like every 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes. And then if someone comes by, I can start engaging at that point. Um, that might be better than just totally ending the stream at 12:30 because maybe this is just not a good time for people to engage. Whereas, maybe if I wait longer, more people will come by. Um, so maybe I will experiment doing that today. I also need to get lunch soon. Um, so maybe I'll just turn off my mic and camera while I'm having lunch, unless someone comes by. I guess I could talk during lunch. Not sure if I want to be on camera during that time, but it's like going out to lunch with somebody, except we're doing it through streaming. All right. 12:28. I think this is a record for the longest time I've streamed where there's been zero participation from chat or calls. Um, Usually there's been at least something in the first 20 minutes. Maybe always there's been at least something. So um, I don't know if today the people are more shy or what, but it is different. All right, one more minute till 12:30, and then I think I'm going to get some lunch. Uh, Here's what I'll do. I'll leave the stream going, but I think I'll just turn off my camera and maybe my mic. And if I see something in the chat, I will turn back on my mic and maybe my camera too, and I will say something. I'll engage. But yeah, I think I'm just gonna turn off my mic and camera at 12:30. That is in a few seconds, and get some lunch. But I'll leave the stream going, and I'll engage if I see any engagement. Maybe I'll type that in chat just so people know that I haven't totally disappeared. I've just turned off my camera and mic. Um, so I'll just type a note in the chat that says, I'm still here, but I've just got my camera and mic turned off. And if you want to engage with me, just say something in the chat and I'll come back. All right. So bye for now. Still here. Just going to turn off my mic and camera. Hello, Ribbens. I see your question or your comment in the chat. Will I be willing to be interviewed? Uh, sure. I don't know if you mean right now or at some point in the future. You say you're curious about my motivation, my vision, etc. Do you mean my motivation and my vision for my YouTube channel? Um, if so, I'd be happy to talk about that. Um, you ask, is that okay? What okay? Um, if you mean you want to interview me right now, like if you want, do you want to come on Zoom or just interview? I guess if you want to come on through Zoom, just click on the link that's pinned on the chat, and then I can let you in on Zoom. I'll see that you're okay. Yeah, you say you'll hop on the Zoom, but that's cool. Um, yeah, go ahead and do that. I just took down my I was starting to have lunch, right? Um, okay, I see your admit there. I just hit admit. Okay. Looks like oh, there you are. Hello. Hi, Megan. Oh, you have to unmute. I can't hear you.
Sorry, yes.
There we
I
go.
always forget. It's embarrassing how many times I've been in Zoom meetings and still forget the procedure.
Yeah, no worries. I turned my camera off because I was about to start having some lunch. Um, actually, I'm curious what it if I turn it back on right now, probably looks um, the you can probably tell the setup is different. Um, I was starting to take down my equipment because I was moving things around so I could have lunch at the place I'm sitting right now. So while I'm gonna have to get
I
some
have
lunch.
no
We
problem with you having some lunch.
No,
This,
I mean we
this,
can
we
talk.
can
I'm
table
happy to
this.
talk. I just want to turn the video off because it'll look weird, I think. But we can keep talking. Also, I need to um, adjust where I put this mic. Um, so just give me 1 minute, and I will have this mic in a place where I can talk to you without having to hold it with my hand. Just a minute.
Sure.
I'll be right back.
Okay.
I can still hear you.
Oh,
I'm not
okay.
gonna.
Yeah, no, I can kind of preamble for a bit if that's cool.
Sure.
Um, I've been following your channel ever since um, you asked a question of Huron Brook at Ocon, was it this past year? But you kind of asked if you could pitch your channel, and he was like, sure. And that's kind of when I started following you. Um, Although I think we were in OAC together roughly a million years ago. I don't want to date either one of us, but so as I'm kind of scrolling through your channel, I was curious kind of, what I guess the thing I'm second most curious about is just kind of, what what made you start it, kind of what in what ways you sort of think of distinguishing yourself from other objectivist YouTubers. And the thing I'm most curious about is sorry, I'm hesitating to ask this question. I'm going to interrupt myself for a second. I asked this question to about four objectivist YouTubers on a panel about 4 years ago. And I thought it was a fairly innocuous question. And then they all kind of stopped posting videos on YouTube. I hope it had nothing to do with this question, but you can understand why I'm a little nervous to ask it. Now, maybe they just kind of dropped for, they were satisfied with what they'd done with the channel and that was it. But like I said, you can kind of understand why I'm a little nervous to ask this question. But my question is, like what is the vision that kind of, I won't say gets you up in the morning, but gets you in front of the microphone. You know what I mean? Like it's not nothing to kind of get in front of the microphone and solicit people to come chat with you and including weirdos like me. Um what's the vision that's kind of pulling you forward? Like what would you like the world to look like as a result of your efforts? Do those two questions make sense?
First of all, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, I changed the mic that I'm using.
Oh, were
Uh,
you just trying to interrupt me and then I just kept
oh
on
no,
rambling?
no. No, actually it's still not the mic that I thought it was going to be. Just a second. Let me try to does it sound different than it did before?
It does.
Okay, let me make one change and see if it sounds any better. Hold on. Okay, I just changed to a different mic. Does it sound different now?
Yes.
Does it sound better now?
Yes.
Okay. Actually, I have one more idea I want to try on the mics. Just one second. I've been because I was having lunch, I switched to a different mic that I thought was going to work better. But now I just had an idea of how to use my previous mic, which is actually better than the mic I'm going to use now, than the one I'm using right now. And I'm going to see if I can switch back to that and get even better sounds. Just a few seconds. Okay, let me go back and zoom. And okay, I just switched back to the other mic. Does it sound any different or better now?
I think so, but I'm not. I'm probably not the person to ask. I don't have a
Good
good
enough.
ear.
It's sufficiently clear.
Yeah,
And okay,
yes.
all right. I'll just go with this for now. Well, first of all, thanks for coming on and thanks for your questions. Um, so I probably won't remember everything you said, but it was all interesting. But let me just pick up on
Thank you.
some that I remember. So you said you first encountered me through Euron Brooks' show. So for anyone who doesn't know,
When he was this was at Ocon, I
right?
think. Yeah, he was giving a talk and you were in the question queue and you asked if you could pitch your show and he was like, go nuts. And
Yeah.
that's
So
that's my idea.
he does a live show from Ocon whenever he's
Oh, is
um
that what it was? I'm sorry, I totally forgot.
yeah, every year from Ocon he does a live broadcast and there's like a studio audience. Well, not really a studio, it's just one of the hotel rooms. And I attended his broadcast from Ocon. So this is just for anyone who wasn't there. I guess I don't know if you saw that on YouTube or you were actually there in the audience at Ocon. Oh, you just saw it on YouTube. Okay. Yeah, so I was there and I had a question for him about his blocking policy actually, because there were some people who were maybe you would call them trolls in his chat, and I was just wondering, what his policy is on blocking, like um, if anyways, maybe I should put a link to that clip in the chat at some point or in the comments after I do this stream. But anyways, before I asked him this question about his blocking policy, I just asked him if it was okay with him if I could say what my YouTube channel is. So I thought that might be a good audience to mention it in front of a fertile audience because lots of objectivists. And
Yeah.
actually, it was. I got a lot of subscribers after I made that announcement, and that was great. I've been thinking about doing something, maybe not exactly the same kind of thing, but just super chatting his channel sometime and doing another kind of announcement. See if I can get some more subscribers. So maybe I'll do that sometime soon. But anyways, I guess you knew about that, but that was more just to kind of fill in the audience in case they didn't know what you were referring to. I have seen you around, by the way, at conferences. I don't know if we've ever actually met or talked, but I guess we can. this can be our introduction to each other. So nice to finally meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Um, so you were asking like what gets me out of bed in the morning or what my motivation is. Well, I'm trying to promote Ayn Rand.
Well, I realize that. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you already. I guess what I'm really trying to ask is if you could kind of paint that picture. So, a question I'm fond of asking, especially to objectivists who give courses, I'll ask them, okay, play the tape forward. In 6 weeks after we leave your course, in 6 months, in 6 years, what are you hoping we do with this course, and what are you hoping the world looks like as a result? And I realize how incredibly unfair that question is, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Sure. Um, oh, um, I'm leaning forward, so I think it's if my voice sounds different, it's because my head is in a different position relative to my mic. Um, I'm trying to put something back in the fridge just a second. 1 second. Boy, um, need a few more seconds. Hold on.
For a second, I thought you were under something heavy, um, or had fallen down a deep hole or something. I'm relieved to hear that's not the case.
No, everything is fine. Um, okay, so you were asking like what kind of my goals, like what would I hope is accomplished in 6 weeks or a year or something? Like what do I hope people will take away from what I'm doing? Is that kind of the question?
Less takeaway and more what they do.
What they do? Well, I mean, there's a range of people who I think engage with my channel. There are people who've probably never read Ayn Rand. They might have seen me on somewhere else on YouTube. Like a lot of people have heard of me through my calls to Sam Cedar. I don't know if you've seen any of those calls, but he's a leftist and he's got a large show on YouTube, like a 1.7 million subscribers or something. And I've gone on his show several times to debate him. And the idea there is just to expose more people to Ayn Rand's ideas. And when I've gone on his show in the past, I've usually seen an uptick in subscribers on my channel. So it's a way of, I guess some people at least are intrigued or interested somehow in these ideas, or they just like the conversation. I don't know exactly what motivates them to come over to my channel, but they do sometimes. And then by doing that, they get exposed to more of my universe and Ayn Rand's universe. Um, and then I'm hoping that they will continue in their journey of exploring Ayn Rand's ideas and maybe have that will have an impact on their life and the world at large. I mean, there's so many ways it could impact their lives in the world more broadly. And I don't know exactly. There's no way to know what the consequences of my going on any particular show or exposing myself to any particular person will have. But just at a very fundamental level, I know that if I speak the truth and spread these ideas, it's going to have some kind of good effect. At least that's what I think, and so that's why I'm doing it. But I don't have like a concrete goal. Like I aim to have like 1,200 subscribers by October or something like that. That's much more concrete than I have in
Right,
mind.
right. Yeah, so I'm thinking about like I have a beautiful, precocious, brilliant 9-year-old daughter. So it's very real to me, kind of what 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 I'm doing, that I mean, maybe that's not fair. I'm interrupting myself again. I was just thinking that like she's always top of mind, right? And so when I sit in front of a lab bench, it's very clear to me like she has a kid. These are the diseases that if her child um has if it befalls her child, we can fix, right? And the kid will enjoy, endless days of being a healthy kid, as opposed to patients I'm thinking of and working for now who never get to enjoy a day of being a healthy kid. So it's very perceptual for me in that way. Um, I don't know if you kind of want to talk about like objectivism is obviously important to you. I don't know if you want to kind of talk about why. I don't want to ask anything too personal. I guess I just, like you were talking about like exposing more people to these ideas so their lives are better. And maybe you could say something about in what way objectivism has made your life better. And I don't know, maybe ways in which it hasn't. I don't know. Does that question make sense?
Yeah. Um, I think that's a good question to ask. Um, Ways in which it has made my life better. I guess it's like egoism is one thing that's coming to mind, which is implicit in everything I do. Like everything I do is for my own benefit or happiness, um, which I don't think I would be comfortable with prior to having learned about Ayn Rand. Actually, I remember before I learned about Ayn Rand, um, I had a conflict with a girlfriend at the time, and uh, I, she was saying, "Well, isn't it kind of selfish to do what you're doing?" I won't go into the details of exactly what it was, but I said, "Yeah, it is kind of selfish, and maybe that's not good. Maybe I should stop doing that." Um, but now that I've learned about egoism, I don't think there's anything wrong with doing things that are selfish, properly understood. Um, I have a different kind of reaction. So it might have been something like I was spending too much time on my career goals. Maybe I was being ambitious, and that was causing some friction in the relationship. And maybe she wanted more time. Um, and I just didn't see it as self-interested. Um, but now I guess I wouldn't I wouldn't let that be an objection. Like it could be valid. Like there's a kind of balance that you might need to strike if you're in a relationship between spending time on career goals and then spending time with the other person in the relationship. And it's not necessarily the case that you should always prioritize one over the other. Maybe your balance is out of whack. But um, the reasoning behind shifting the balance shouldn't be that selfishness is bad. um, so I guess part of my reasoning for uh, compromising in this instance was that I wasn't really comfortable with selfishness, and now I am. So I wouldn't have. I guess I would be able to navigate a conflict like that in a better way these days. So um, maybe that's like a long-winded way of trying to give an example of how I think it's made my life go better. And I don't know that I made it very clear, but that's at least some initial thoughts I have on how it's at least changed the way I've lived. And I assume that um, it's changed it in a way that's going to make my life go better. But I don't want to ramble on for too long. I'm going to
Well, I guess
kind of.
just as a follow-up question. So in the course of developing this channel, um, you're hoping that others kind of really become focused on pursuing their flourishing and do so in a guilt-free manner. Is that a fair summary of what you said?
Well, that's one thing I want people to, I mean, I want people to uh, grasp, understand, implement the entire philosophy. So, I also want people to accept capitalism and follow epistemology of reason. And then, yes, ethics is also part of it. I want people to be egoists and pursue their own happiness. So that's one part of the entire package of objectivism that I want people to get. But my channel, when I originally started it, it was just focused on the topic of selfishness, and I created what I called the Selfishness Project, and I would go around. At the time, I was just finishing up grad school, and I would go around my campus interviewing students, not just students, but mostly students, and I would have conversations with them about selfishness. And all these videos are up on my channel. There's like over 30 of them, I think. I would just randomly have chats with people about selfishness and try to give them a new way to think about it based on what I've learned from objectivism. So during that phase of my channel, which lasted maybe a year and a half or so, um, I think it would be fair to say that I want people to live a more selfish, in the objectivist sense of that term, life. But I eventually wanted to broaden the scope of my channel. I was interested in talking about other issues in philosophy, not just selfishness. So I eventually broadened it to just anything in objectivism and philosophy more broadly, but coming at it from an objectivist viewpoint. And I want people to get, as much as the philosophy as they can. But, that of course includes selfishness.
So
Flourishing.
is this more about kind of like objectivism is applied to interpersonal relationships or how to think about the topic du jour?
All of the above.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I I'm struggling to find a way to formulate this question, and so I'm sorry. I'm probably gonna do it in a really ham-fisted way. But like, wow, I'm sorry. I don't know how else to ask this question. Like, what? How do you distinguish yourself from like Yaron Brook? It's kind of like the probably the most well-known objectivist podcaster.
hmm Yeah. Well, I guess we are generally doing the same thing. We're promoting Ayn Rand's ideas, but I guess one difference is I've got a PhD in philosophy. He's got a PhD in finance. So I have a background and knowledge set that is different than his. So like the just I think it was in my last live stream, someone asked a question like, what is the difference between Rand's view of knowledge and Hume's view and Kant's view? And I was able to talk about that for a while. Um, and Euron gets questions like that sometimes, but maybe he doesn't know as much about some of those figures as I have since I've spent more time studying them. And then, of course, on the flip side, if someone asks a question like about tariffs or something in economics or finance, he's going to have a lot more knowledge and things to say than I would. So that would be one area where I am different than Iran. Um, and
Totally
there
fair.
may be
I'm curious. Like, what was the topic of your dissertation?
there's actually a video about that on my channel. So I
I'm just shamelessly extorting self promotion from you.
no, that's fine. This is mutually beneficial. It's a win-win conversation. I was looking for engagement. It took a while to get someone to come on, so I'm glad you came on. And I see we've got more people. We're up to 5 now. I think that's the highest it's been for this stream. Um, so I wrote my dissertation on the philosophy of mind. It might be better known in objectivist circles as the metaphysics of consciousness, which is kind of a mouthful, but maybe to put it more simply, the relation of the mind and the physical world. So there's been a debate in philosophy going back at least until Descartes in the 17th century, as to what exactly is the relation of the mental and the physical, or the mind and the brain, or the mind and the
Mm.
body. Sometimes it's called the mind-body problem. Are they two separate things and they can just float free of each other? Like, is there a soul that can survive the death of the body? That would be a religious view, which for centuries or millennia was commonly held. And I guess some people still hold it today. They think your soul survives the death of the body. But then you also have materialists who say, well, the mind is really the same thing as the body. There's really no difference between them. The mind just is the brain, or the consciousness just is the body. So you've got dualists. These are people who think there's a difference between the mind and the brain, and then you have monists who think there's really just one thing. And then they break down into different versions. Like within dualism, you've got what's called property dualists and substance dualists. And within monists, you have idealists who think everything is fundamentally mental. And you have materialists who think everything is fundamentally material. Some of this is discussed in Opar, Leonard Peikoff's book, Objectivism, the Philosophy of Ayn Rand. In chapter one on metaphysics, there's a section that deals with these sorts of issues. The subsection is called Idealism and Materialism as Rejections of the Basic Axioms. So, if you or anyone listening is interested in this sort of topic and you want to weigh in on it, if you want to hear some of the objectivist thoughts on this, you can read that section of Leonard Peikoff's book. Leonard Peikoff being the top student of Ayn Rand for many decades, for anyone who doesn't know. So I wrote a dissertation dealing with this issue, and it's titled, what was the title? A Critique of the Scientific Case for Physicalism. Physicalism is a more modern term for materialism. Like back in the 20th century, 19th century, I think you would more commonly come across the term materialism. But in the last few decades, it's been called physicalism instead. And I could go into that a bit if you want, but suffice it to say that it's basically the same idea as materialism. Everything is fundamentally material or physical. And it's allegedly the case that there is scientific grounding for that position. So a lot of people think that if you're going to take a scientific view of the world and of consciousness in particular, the right view is materialism. And if you don't accept that view, if you're some kind of dualist, then you're positing there's this spooky, mysterious soul. You have a kind of religious view. Um, if you don't accept materialism, I think it's a kind of false alternative. Like I don't think if you're not a materialist, that means you think there's some spooky ghost in the machine, as Gilbert Ryle has put it. He's a Oxford philosopher, and that this could survive the death of the body, as someone like Descartes thought, who was a Catholic, by the way. So I think he had a hand in ushering in the scientific revolution, but he was still a Catholic, and maybe it wasn't safe not to be at his time. He was a French philosopher in the 17th century, so this is kind of pre-Enlightenment, or maybe at the very beginnings of it. But anyways, I argue in my dissertation that there's actually not a good scientific case for physicalism. And so I'm not arguing for dualism. Instead, I'm just arguing against the arguments for physicalism. So I'm saying, so I leave it open. Maybe physicalism is right, but the arguments that people give for it, at least the most common arguments that allegedly are based on science, don't work. So that's why I titled it A Critique of the Scientific Case for Physicalism. And I go through it in more detail in this video on my YouTube channel, which was originally a video on the UK, the Ayn Rand Center UK channel. I was invited to give a presentation there a couple years ago, 2023, I believe. And they had there's a video on their channel as well, but it's also on my channel. I think that it's on my channel. It has the title "Is the Mind Physical?" But if you just type that into the search box on my channel, it can you'll turn it up, and I go into a lot more detail on exactly what the arguments are, pro and con, physicalism. So there
I'm so
is
sorry, Dan. My beloved daughter just came back from hanging with her friends. That's why I'm turning out the video. But I did want to ask a follow-up question, if you don't mind.
sure.
I was going to ask, what are the applications of your dissertation? I mean, it's original research, right? So, um, I'm kind of wondering stuff like, I'm a scientist, right? So, or a molecular biologist to be more specific. So I'm kind of wondering, like, what are the applications of understanding, the relationship between the physical brain and consciousness? And my first thought was like, well, Maria Montessori identified very sensitive periods during one second, my love. um, um sorry, that was to my daughter. Very sensitive periods in which, if you can help a child learn a second language, or certain concepts in reading, like letter identification, when their brain is ready for it, it becomes so easy to learn. And if you miss that period, it becomes so much harder. And there are definitely those kinds of sensitive periods where if you miss that period, you're just never going to be as good at it as if you hadn't. So there's real implications um, for learning, for intellectual, I guess efficiency might be the best way to put it, for like understanding the relationship between consciousness and the brain. So that's the kind of my follow-up question. Does the question make sense?
Um, so I have a couple of thoughts coming to mind. One is so are you asking like what is the or at least one of your questions, is it like what is the practical import of this? Like how is it helpful to someone's development to know this? And if
Yes.
okay. Um well, I guess maybe one of the ways it could help is just providing a coherent view of the world. Or actually, maybe I should get into this in another way. What drove my interest, my motivation in it primarily was the issue of free will. So before I actually wrote a master's thesis on free will um, before I wrote this dissertation, and I found that a lot of resistance to accepting free will among academics, at least, it seemed to be coming from their materialist or physicalist premises. So, free will is a very important feature of human beings. If we didn't have free will, we wouldn't be moral or ethical beings. We'd just be determined. And today, most people, most academics, at least, most philosophers, at least in the Western-speaking world, in the Anglo-American tradition, are determinists, and they don't believe in free will, at least not genuine free will. Now, they sometimes use the term, but I don't think what they call free will is actually free will. They hold a view that's called compatibilism, at least many of them do, which is that you can both be free and determined. Now, I don't think that view makes any sense, but they they try to make sense of that view. I don't think it works, but if you're of the view that free will is not compatible with determinism, that it requires an ability to um, go down road A or road non-A, and it's up to you, and it's not predetermined, then is that sort of view compatible with a materialist metaphysics. Like if you think the consciousness or the mind is purely material, just a bunch of atoms, collection of atoms bouncing around, for instance, is that compatible with something like free will? You might think not. In any case, it seemed like the resistance from a lot of the academic philosophers I was engaging with was that there's no room for something like the sort of free will that I think is real if you believe in something like a materialist view of the mind. So, as to I guess this is something we could debate, or that one could debate. Like, is it actually true that if you're a materialist, then there's no room for something like free will in the sense that free will is understood by objectivism? That's a debate you could have. Um, but
I mean, it's interesting. As you were talking, I was actually thinking about, I mean, I think at least a lot of the scientists I have known, yeah, really discard this idea of free will as something sort of mystical. And, like the idea that everything, including our thoughts, is kind of like, you know, billiard balls bumping into each other is really attractive to scientists. At least this is anecdotal, but this is kind of what I've seen. And it certainly was attractive to me. There's something very elegant about the idea that, everything is causally affected by everything else. And that if you just knew, if you could somehow put everything into a Heisenberg machine and and get both the position and velocity, you would know everything that has been and everything that will be. Um, but I was just thinking about like what are the implications of taking free will seriously as a scientist? And I'm I definitely don't have a complete answer to that. But the idea that let me see if I can kind of put this together on the fly. The idea that you know what assays you do to make what observations is not only within your agency, but you really have to think about what might be relevant and what isn't. And if you're looking to link correlations to causation, first of all, that's a heroic amount of free will that a lot of scientists don't do. But if you're trying to kind of hone in on causal relationships, prioritizing which causes might be most impactful or most likely, that's again not a conversation that a lot of scientists have with themselves, at least as far as I can tell. It's hard to get inside their brains, but it doesn't look like it from the outside. I don't know. Does that kind of I'm sorry, I'm coming at your your thesis from a very biased perspective. But I was curious, kind of, it's clear that free will is important to you, and I don't know if you wanted to riff on that.
I am a bit at a loss as to like I'm not sure I followed the main point you were trying to get at in this last, like you were saying that there's an elegance, there's something attractive about the billiard ball view of the world. It's got a kind of simplicity to it. Um,
Well,
but
I was just saying that, like, a lot of scientists I know sort of discard free will as mystical. And yet, here I am in a lot of ways trying to convince them to do science better. I think there's a real gap in the philosophy of science, at least the philosophy of science that's sort of permeated um, the professors who kind of educated me in graduate school. There's a lot I wish I'd known sooner, and a lot I wish I hadn't had to figure out on my own. Um, so like my first thought when you were talking about like trying to convince people that free will is real is like, I don't care that much. Um, but then I kind of paused and said to myself, should I? And I guess that's the question I'm kind of stuck on is should I be trying to convince scientists that free will is something to take seriously?
Well, it's I guess where my mind just went was like it's not just for scientists, it's for anyone really. Like I think it's
Scientists
uh,
and also real people.
well, assuming scientists aren't real people. I mean, I think a lot of non-scientists are influenced by scientists, and they're like you have college students, for instance, they go through college and they take courses from scientists, and they pick up the ideas of the scientists, and they go out and become journalists or maybe not journalists, which is, I guess, a kind of influencer profession. But whether they become influencers of some sort themselves or not, I think it's good for anyone to believe that, well, to believe the truth, which I think it means that they have free will. I mean, it's just a fundamental of human nature, and I think it's good for anyone to correctly identify their nature. And um, scientists are, I guess, they're influential on the views that many people have, and but I think it's good for anyone
I
to
have yet
believe.
to experience that. I have yet to have my views be influential to anyone, as far as I can tell. Maybe some scientists, but not this one.
Well, there's certainly a large range when it comes to how influential a scientist is and exactly in what way he or she is influential. I mean, you have some like Newton, who's a world-changing scientist, and then you have people who are not world-changing, but they have a lesser influence. But it's I don't think it's I mean, I think it's important for everyone as an individual to have the right view of themselves. And I mean, life is fundamentally about your own happiness. It's not about influencing others. Some people are in that business of influencing others or not, but I think it's important for every individual for their own life and happiness to grasp that they are in control of it. They have free will. Um, so it would be, I mean, it's great if you can influence influencers, like if you can get people who say scientists, someone like I don't know, Sam Harris. I think he was a neuroscientist, and he's very influential now, I think, or at least he has a large following, and he's out there promoting determinism, as far as I've heard. I haven't read any of his books, but it seems like he's one of the prominent cultural voices these days who is, and he promotes determinism, thinks free will is some kind of an illusion. So it'd be great if people like that could be persuaded to to think that people have free will, and then they could use their influence to um, get more people to think they have free will. But um, whether you can do that or not, like I might not be able to reach someone like Sam Harris, at least not right now, but I can still
Well,
reach other individuals.
and I'm still, I think what I keep asking is like, what is the technology of the science you're promulgating, right? Like you're the science, the um the method is objectivism, but what's the application? I'm sorry. Again, I'm coming at these questions are coming from a very biased slant, and I admit that freely. Um, so in terms of free will, like some of the technology is clear, right? You have agency in your own life. You're not determined by your past or your trauma or whatever. Um, this is all what I'm saying now is kind of more the psychological technology about which I know nothing. And then there's the technology of how you gather data and what observations you make and what you do with those observations once you've made them. And that's sort of the free will the technology of free will as applied to science. And yeah, I don't know if you know if you're looking to kind of apply your science, your sort of the basic science of consciousness and free will to the applications of psychology and science, or you know what I mean? I guess I'm trying to get a sense of, I don't know. Again, this feels like a very unfair question. It's like, you know, every time I meet a scientist, I'm like, especially if they're doing basic science, I'm like, okay, but like, how might this improve the human condition? Which is not always a fair question. So
So
I don't know if you,
is that like the essence of the question? How does it improve the condition, the
I,
human condition to know that you
yeah,
have free will?
I'm sorry, I'm really being circuitous, and I don't mean to be. I guess what I'm really asking is like, in you know, what's the technology you're developing? And again, I think that might be an unfair question because it's not like you have to.
Okay, so
But I'll leave it
your
there.
use of I'm unclear on your what you mean when you say what is the technology. Like when I hear that term technology, I mean I think of like computers and factories and
Mhm.
machines and philosophers. We don't use technology, at least not in that sense. So maybe you have in mind a broader sense of technology. Like what technology did Ayn Rand use? I mean, she wrote books, she gave
Right,
speeches.
right. No, I guess I mean more like okay, so there's the discovery of CRISPR, right? It's these little pieces of RNA that specifically bind to these certain proteins. And when these certain proteins see a complementary sequence of that RNA that's kind of sort of inside them, they do a job, right? That's the science. And the technology is that you can use that to edit a mutated gene to restore its correct function. So it's not producing a protein that poisons the patient, or not producing a protein at all. Or you can use it to create a signal when it sees a specific sequence. So those are kind of the technologies. Sorry, this got really specific really fast. Maybe a better example would be the science of metallurgy, right? Like you discover this new ore called iron, and it turns out that one of the technologies can be um, steel bridges or skyscrapers, but also um, certain ligands for hemoglobin. You know what I mean? So it could have like a biological technology or a structural technology or an architectural technology. And what I'm really asking is like, what is what is the application of the philosophical science you've got? And that's not even the right question. I'm sorry, I'm struggling so hard to ask the right question. Um, but you know, for instance, Gina Gorlin is applying objectivism to the technology of um, psychological flourishing. Is not a good summary, but kind of what she's doing. Does that make
Hmm.
sense?
Maybe I guess I have at least a woozy understanding of what you're asking about. So, like, what is the cash value or the application of something in particular, like free will or the dualist view of the mind? Um, well, I guess free will might be an easier one to take. I think it's more clearly relevant to people's well-being or happiness. Like if you think you are just a puppet then what does that do to your self-respect, for one thing? Like everything you do was just inevitable. It wasn't, you don't really deserve any credit. You don't deserve any respect or admiration, any self-esteem for, say, getting a raise at work or raising a happy child. It was all just going to happen as a deterministic outcome of the billiard balls that make you up and that make up your child and that make up your boss who gave you the raise. You don't really deserve any credit for that. So why are you so high on your moral horse thinking you do? Why are you so proud, right? Where do you get that pride from? There's really no justification for it if you don't have free will, if you're just determined. So I think that would be, and that's going to impact your happiness if you don't really have any valid basis for thinking well of yourself. If you think you just got lucky because you happen to be composed of a certain collection of billiard balls that made you rich and successful, well, that can really pull the rug out from under your self-esteem, I think, and your happiness. It doesn't feel deserved. But if you think you earned this, then I think you will feel proud of yourself justifiably. So I think there is a case where maybe you would see the application or the cash value of believing in something like free will. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I guess to tie it into, so I mentioned before that I got interested in this issue of the nature of the mind through free will. Like it seemed like a lot of the resistance I was getting from academic philosophers on the point of free will was coming from their materialist premises about the mind. Like if you believe in something like materialism, that we're just a collection of atoms bouncing around, then it doesn't make sense to believe in something like free will. So I guess by, one step removed, I got interested in the other issue of the metaphysics of the mind. But ultimately, it all comes back to happiness. Like if I reached the conclusion that it had no implications for happiness, direct or indirect, then I think I would lose interest in the issue of the metaphysics of the mind, whether we're material or immaterial in some respect. But since, at least for a while, I did think it had some connection, ultimately, directly or indirectly, if not directly, to happiness, I did become interested in it. So now I haven't really thought about that issue for a while. Like over the last, since I started my YouTube channel, really, I've focused much more on things that I think people, maybe including myself, can much more easily see are directly tied to happiness. So like I said when I started my channel, it was focused on the selfishness project, as I called it, and I think that's much easier to see the direct connection of something like that on an issue like happiness or well-being than something like the metaphysics of the minds, or even free will. I think free will is closer. It's easier to see the connection of that to something like happiness, but still not as easy as something like issues in ethics itself, like the nature of virtue, the nature of values. So I started my channel focused on those issues, and then eventually I got into other issues, including political issues. I mean, that can have a huge impact on happiness as well. Like, are you living in Ukraine and you just got invaded by some aggressor from Russia? Did you just lose your health care because of some new law under Obamacare or whatever? So politics has implications for people's happiness and well-being, certainly. So that motivates an interest in those fields. So I guess the my focus these days is more on things that are closer to the heart of what I think we should care about, which is happiness or flourishing, well-being. Occasionally, I'll still do a video on free will or metaphysics of the mind, but yeah, they're less of a focus now than they used to be. But
Yeah, that's
and
fair. I mean, I've departed quite a bit from my dissertation was on microbial fuel cells and
yeah,
yeah, things have changed.
Yeah, and part of it I think is, what will make a dissertation that you can pass a committee with? And to some extent, it's, who's available in your departments. Like I think in many universities, you couldn't, even if you wanted to, write a dissertation on something like objectivism, just because there's no one on the faculty who has the interest or the knowledge to supervise such a dissertation. And so you would just have to choose some other topic. Um, and which is not to say I would have chosen to write on objectivism, even if I could have. Like I still might have chosen to write on something like free will or the metaphysics of the mind. But um, I guess part of my goal in going to grad school was to get a degree, which I thought would somehow help me in the overall life that I wanted to have. Like I wanted to promote Ayn Rand's ideas, and maybe having a PhD would help with that. Maybe it would give me more credibility in certain ways. Maybe help me get an audience. So even if I had to write on some dissertation topic which wasn't terribly interesting to me, if I saw that as being able to help me get a degree, which ultimately would help me live the kind of life I would want to live, then I might still be able to find the motivation to write on some niche alien topic because overall it helps the goals I want to achieve in life.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, you can see it as like a stepping stone to the sort of life you want to build.
Yeah. Yeah. Although to be fair, I think you know what I mean? Like you if you move on, I totally respect that because like I said, I've done the same thing. Although I am really fascinated by the idea of like what is the relationship between all these neurons and all their axons and dendrites and their glial, you know what I mean? Like what is the relationship between all of that magic that's going on? Um, physically, chemically, biologically. And my daughter making a Galileo incline. Like and like or learning a language, you know what I mean? Like I think that's fascinating. And if there's something I can do to help make that easier or like as I get further along in my life, like, you know, what what's going to be the possibilities going forward? You know what I mean? Is there's possible to get an injection of neuronal stem cells and have more memory or build new connections or um what are what would the pitfalls of that be? Like I don't know. I just think that's really interesting.
Science is amazing. It's yeah, it's there's just so much that science could do, which is amazing. Like curing diseases, curing cancers, growing new limbs if you lost a limb, maybe. I guess there's all kinds of amazing possibilities that are in the works and that I hope government doesn't get in the way of. So I guess myself, I'm not a scientist, but I'm eh, hoping that I'm at least helping science be able to develop, like by promoting a system like capitalism of freedom.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you. I have been FDA facing for many years now. There's a lot I could say that frankly I don't want to say publicly. Um, but um, there's there's a lot of hurdles there, and some of them are political, and some of them are cultural. You know what I mean? Like it's actually not fun for me to see most movies, kind of depict scientists as, at best amoral and mostly evil. It's not fun for me to say that, yeah, I got my PhD in a microbiology lab, and more than once independently people have asked me, were you creating the next anthrax? As if that would be fun
Mm.
for me. Um, I didn't mean to like throw a pity party for myself, but yeah, it I do appreciate someone like you trying to make a culture that's more hospitable for people who are trying to improve the human condition, um, through through technology and through the discovery of knowledge of the physical world and I should say the biological world in my case.
Yeah, and I appreciate you for being on the front lines of doing that. Um, yeah, so I guess we need each other. It's an integrated multi-front campaign that we're engaged in, and yeah, I think it's important to have both, right? Like you need scientists, you need businessmen, you need Uber drivers to take the scientists to work or whatever, right? It's all
I
integrated.
wish they would do it more because man, I'm in the like Boston, Cambridge area, and commuting anywhere across Cambridge is kind of like getting from one part of the planet to the other and over like cobblestones essentially. Like the worst
Mm.
roads in the state, and Massachusetts is not known for good roads. But that's a digression. My daughter is waiting very patiently for me, so I should drop. But I really appreciate you letting me kind of probe and get more of a sense of what you're after and how you kind of approach um I don't want to say proselytizing, but I'm gonna say
Mhm.
it anyway.
Sure. Yeah, well, I appreciate you coming on, and feel free to drop by anytime. And nothing you said made me want to delete my channel, so maybe I'll break the pattern of the uh, the other people who did that.
Like I said, I feel that at one point, at the same time that like I'm like giving myself way too much credit because I just asked one question, right? But like at the other hand, like what if I did something wrong? Oh, anyway, it was really nice to meet you. So keep up the
Likewise.
good work.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right,
Cheers.
take care. Bye. All right. Well, that was nice. Glad she could come by. Maybe I should have used that as an opportunity to test how to remove someone from a call instead of letting them delete themselves from the call, because that's one thing I want to figure out how to do. But I can figure that out later. All right. Well, it's been hour and 42 minutes since I started streaming. So I'm glad we got a call in, and maybe that's a good note to end on. So I'm going to stop the stream and not sure when I will stream again. I was thinking maybe I'll do two streams a week, like one in the middle of the week, maybe on a Wednesday evening. So it's after work hours. Maybe more people will show up, and then do another stream on the weekend, either Saturday or Sunday, maybe around this time. I can play around with it, um, see what works best. But in any case, I'm going to sign off now, and maybe I'll stream again in a few days. Thanks everyone for coming by, and if you want to drop a like or subscribe if you haven't already, I'd appreciate you doing that, or at least consider doing that. Help the channel grow, and have a good weekend. Talk to you later.